one of the deepest divides in politics today, as we see right-wing populist movements, is between voters with and without a university degree. The diploma divide is one of the deepest divides in politics today.
Er waart al vele decennia een geloof door onze maatschappij. Een overtuiging die we, misschien wel onbewust, van links tot rechts met elkaar delen. Het op het eerste gezicht onschuldige idee dat je moet studeren om hogerop te komen. Want alleen zo bereik je de top van onze meritocratie.
It's very revealing, this contrast between higher and lower education, because it reflects one powerful source of the polarization that afflicts democratic societies, which is the sense of resentment and grievance of many working people who feel that elites, well-educated elites, look down on them, don't respect the work they do or the contributions they make to the economy or to the common good.
Als iedereen gelijke kansen zou krijgen, zouden zij die het verdienen eindigen als winnaars van het spel. Het klinkt misschien ideaal, maar volgens Harvard-wetenschapper Michael Sandel is meritocratie geen utopie, maar een tirannie.
Today, politicians and political parties think of meritocracy as an ideal, as an aspiration, something to aim at and to celebrate. But Michael Young, who coined the term, conceived it as a danger.
In 1958 schreef Young een science fiction essay over het jaar 2033. Dan zou de meritocratische samenleving een feit zijn. Niet afkomst, maar verdienste zou ieders positie bepalen.
It was a dystopian book, The Rise of the Meritocracy. Well, Michael Young was writing in the late 1950s, when the British class system was finally beginning to break down, and the children of the working class were beginning to have more opportunities to go to good schools. He glimpsed that the greater equality of opportunity became, and he was for equality of opportunity, the greater would be the tendency of the winners to believe they had done it on their own. The successful come to believe that their success is their own doing, the measure of their merit, and that they therefore deserve the full bounty that the market bestows upon them, and by implication, that those who struggle, those left behind, must deserve their fate too. And this is an important feature of the tyranny of merit.
Het meritocratische geloof werd de perfecte achtergrondmuziek van een tijd waarin een kloof tussen zij, wiens champagneglaasjes overlopen, en zij die de glaasjes inschenken, steeds groter werd.
Beginning in the 1980s, Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher made the explicit argument that government is the problem and markets are the solution. But even when they were succeeded by center-left politicians and parties, Bill Clinton in the United States, Tony Blair in Britain, Gerhard Schroeder in Germany, these center-left politicians of the 1990s, they softened the harsh edges of the pure laissez-faire policies of the Reagan-Thatcher years, but they never challenged the fundamental assumption that market mechanisms are the primary instruments for defining and achieving the public good. And their response to the growing inequalities of income and wealth and to the wage stagnation that neoliberal globalization brought about, their response to that inequality was to tell people, working people especially, to improve themselves by going and getting a degree. If you want to compete and win in the global economy, Bill Clinton said, what you earn will depend on what you learn.
We live in a world where what you earn depends on what you can learn, where the average 18-year-old will change jobs 8 times in a lifetime, and where none of us can promise any of you that what you now do for a living is absolutely safe from now on.
What's interesting is that it was center-left parties and politicians who most clearly identified themselves with the meritocratic project, who presented neoliberal globalization as if it were a fact of nature. Bill Clinton said globalization is like water flowing downstream in the wind. You can't stop it. And Tony Blair said there are those who say we should stop and debate globalization. And then he added, we may as well debate whether autumn should follow summer.
I hear people say sometimes, we have to stop and debate globalization. You might as well debate whether autumn should follow summer. They're not debating it in China and India. They're seizing its possibilities in a way that will transform their lives and ours.
The effect of that was to hollow out public discourse, to leave very little for democratic citizens to argue about. The effect of that was to consign most important questions to experts and to technocrats. But over time, many democratic citizens felt disempowered. The economic inequality of the age of globalization was made all the more toxic by the meritocratic rationale, the meritocratic justification for who landed on top. Michael Young worried as politics unfolded that he was misunderstood because politicians were praising and aspiring to make their societies into fuller meritocracies. The term he designed as a satirical term of abuse, part of a dystopian story, had become the name of an ideal. He saw this and he worried about it. And he asked Tony Blair in Britain, who celebrated meritocracy, please stop using the term.
And did he stop?
No, no.
The premise that we're all created equal is the opening line in the American story. And while we don't promise equal outcomes, we've strived to deliver equal opportunity. The idea that success doesn't depend on being born into wealth or privilege. It depends on effort and merit.
It lends itself also to a certain vision of equality that center-left as well as center-right parties found very comfortable and attractive. The idea of equality of opportunity. Everyone should start the race from the same starting point. And center-left parties said it's not enough just to begin the race at the same line. It's important that everyone be equipped with equal access to opportunities for health, for education, for housing, for security. And then when we start the race, if only we can bring everyone to a genuine equality of opportunity, then the winners of the race will deserve their winnings.
Zowel de uitvinder van het monopoliespel als de bedenker van het begrip meritocratie bedoelden hun uitvindingen als kritiek. En toch werden ze steeds populairder.
This idea of deservingness looms large, not only in political discourse, but also in the public culture.
Meritocratische ideeën over het waard zijn stroomden zelfs door het water van onze geshampoode haren.
I use the most expensive hair color in the world, preferenced by L'Oreal. It's not that I care about money, it's that I care about my hair. Actually, I don't mind spending more for L'Oreal because I'm worth it.
This slogan of L'Oreal, because I'm worth it, it's an early expression of this meritocratic idea of success and of deservingness.
He says I'm a gorgeous blonde. He says I'm worth it.
I'm worth it. I'm worth it.
McDonald's used this phrase, this advertising song, "You deserve a break today." So deservingness enters into the public culture. What do I deserve? What do you deserve? And it becomes connected to talents, and that provides a rationalization for vastly unequal income and wealth and social esteem, with those who happen to have the talents that society happens to reward. It's that set of ideas, it's that meritocratic faith that I consider to be the tyranny of merit.
Ask me my 3 main priorities for government, and I tell you, education, education, and education.
This is a country where no matter what you look like or where you come from, if you're willing to study and work hard, you can go as far as your talents will take you. You can make it if you try.
What these politicians missed was the insult implicit in that bracing advice. The insult was this: if you're struggling in the new economy and if you didn't get a degree, your failure must be your fault. So this created understandable resentment and anger, especially after the financial crash of 2008, when these same politicians and parties bailed out Wall Street but did little to help ordinary homeowners and working people. And I think the anger was deepened by the self-satisfied advice, the deregulation of the financial industry, the neoliberal version of the global economy that these parties promoted. That was not the problem. The problem was you didn't improve yourselves if you're struggling and if you don't have a degree. That created anger, and that anger fueled the populist backlash that we see today. In a meritocratic society, Michael Young anticipated people would come increasingly to internalize the results of the economic distribution of income and wealth and the political distribution of power. And he predicted that in the year 2034, there would be a populist revolt overturning the elite, the meritocratic elite. He was right, except that revolt came 18 years ahead of schedule. The people say, how can a populist backlash, an angry populist backlash against elites, be led by a figure like Donald Trump, who's a wealthy man, not as wealthy as he claims, perhaps? How can it be led by Donald Trump, a figure who is certainly elite in terms of his income and wealth?
It has not been easy for me. And, you know, I started off in Brooklyn. My father gave me a small loan of $1 million. I came into Manhattan.
The answer is the anger is not against business elites. The anger is not even against the wealthy, for the most part. The populist anger that fuels the backlash is against meritocratic elites.
I just wonder, too, I mean, how come everybody I know of that went to college is a Biden supporter?
Yeah.
And I don't understand how everybody is a Biden supporter if you just went to college. So what are they teaching in this college?
Donald Trump was able, surprisingly perhaps, to tap into that anger because he himself, for his entire career, has felt looked down upon by the New York banks, by Wall Street, by the professional classes who have disdained him and not wanted to do business with him. So he comes by the politics of grievance authentically. It's the one authentic thing about him. It's a politics, as he describes it, of revenge and retribution against those elites, including the universities, who have looked down upon him, whom he sees as hostile to his project.
Harvard wants to fight. They want to show how smart they are, and they're getting their kicked. They're taking $5 billion, and I'd rather see that money go to trade school.
You know, I've been asked why in the world I would want to be the secretary of a department that is going to be done away with, and I'm actually firing myself.
She's an extraordinary person, and hopefully she will be our last Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon.
Trump's attempts to get rid of the Department of Education is one way of attacking the meritocracy. In fact, the person he put in charge of the Department of Education was not an educator exactly. It was the woman who was the president of the World Wrestling Entertainment, the World Wrestling Federation.
Links concentreert zich al zo lang op de vraag of iedereen wel gelijke kansen heeft aan de start en of de race wel eerlijk verloopt, dat het misschien heeft verzaakt zich af te vragen of het eigenlijk wel een gezellig en rechtvaardig spel is. En of je het wel moet willen meespelen.
What we need to do is to reclaim as a political question, to reclaim as democratic citizens what counts as a valuable contribution to the economy. During the pandemic, it seemed for a time as if we might be able to have this broader debate. Because you remember during the pandemic, those of us with the luxury of working from home couldn't help but recognize how deeply we depend on workers we often overlook. Warehouse workers, grocery store workers, delivery workers, nurse assistants, childcare workers. These are not the best paid or the most honored workers in our society. But during the pandemic, we celebrated them as essential workers. You remember we applauded for them at the end of the day. We put up banners thanking them. But the pandemic receded, the moment passed, and we went back to business as usual. What center-left parties have missed in recent decades is a politics of the common good, a politics of community, of belonging, of mutual responsibility for one another. And I think there's a hunger for community. The use of the immigration issue reveals this. Because when responsible political parties don't speak a language of community and belonging, when they leave patriotism to hyper-nationalists and to the extreme right, then people's hunger for community and belonging will be diverted to blaming immigrants for their problems. So in a way, what I'm suggesting, both in democracy's discontent and in the tyranny of merit, what I'm calling for is a political project that, on the one hand, is more demanding of economic arrangements hospitable to self-government, dealing more effectively with widening inequalities, but at the same time, that draws on a certain patriotism, not the patriotism of hyper-nationalists or those who blame immigrants for all of our problems, but a healthy kind of patriotism that reminds us of what we share as democratic citizens. And this requires rebuilding the public sphere, rebuilding class-mixing institutions, public places, common spaces that bring us together in the ordinary course of life, to break down the tendency of rich and poor to live separate lives. It could be the way back from the harsh ethic of success that drives us apart. It could point us beyond the tyranny of merit to a more generous, less rancorous way of life.